Before we begin, I want to give a special thanks to Nintendo UK for sending me this game to review. Pokémon is practically an annual series, only missing out a release every few years, but for many this caused the series to get stale, and the Pokémon company was forced to try new things to reinvent the franchise. Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee is the result of this, changing up many of the fundamentals of traditional Pokémon games, much in the same way that Pokémon Go on mobile phones did. That said, this is still a mainline console title, and there are certain mechanics, such as battling, that remain. The combination of new and old has made Pokémon Let's Go Eevee, the version of the game I'll be focusing on for this review, feel like a half step towards true change. But whether this change is good or bad, well, let's find out. When Pokémon Go launched, it knew its demographic and stuck with the original 151 Pokémon in a hope to recapture players who grew up with the Game Boy classics. Pokémon Let's Go attempts to do the same thing by only having the original 151 plus Mega and Alolan forms, and to achieve this set itself out as a remake of the classic Game Boy games. Kind of. Game Freak already remade Red, Blue and Green back on the GBA, so rather than try again with those games, they instead chose to reimagine Pokémon Yellow, the anime-inspired fourth game in the series. However, this remake can't decide if it really is a remake or a new story set in the same world. All the same familiar faces are here, with all 8 gym leaders, Professor Oak and Team Rocket all reprising their roles, including anime staples Jessie and James. However, early new elements are introduced and stories slightly tweaked that make this not a remake, but not a sequel either. The obvious indicator of this is the appearances of the original Red, Blue and Green as NPCs. Choice dialogue implies that they never received their Pokédexes, and thus never went on the original journey, meaning this can't be a sequel or a remake. It's simply another reimagining, as if the Pokémon timeline wasn't confusing enough already. Instead of playing as the original trainers, you play as new ones designed to be younger versions of the duo found in Pokémon Go. There is also a new rival that the players can name, although the default is Trace. Trace is a much kinder rival than the original Blue, and also a little pathetic. I definitely think he is one of the weaker rivals the series has seen, which is a shame as the rivals are meant to be a big motivator to improve. But I crush Trace without effort at pretty much every turn, but more on the difficulty later. Outside of some minor changes, the story is mostly the same as Pokémon Yellow, which is very simple. However, I think it does a great job at appealing to its target demographic. Much like Go, Let's Go feels like it was designed to bring in those who only played the original titles, and so the amount of nostalgia in this game is staggering. And as someone who grew up playing these, and even has the original Yellow and special Game Boy Color that could come with it, I am definitely one of these players who was affected by it. There is just a certain charm around revisiting the land of Kanto in glorious HD on your TV. And on that note, this is the first HD Pokémon RPG. We saw Pokémon Rumble and Pokken on Wii U, but those were spin-off titles, and I personally think that Game Freak did a fantastic job of bringing over the Pokémon style to consoles. With the bumping graphics and power, there is always a push from some fans to go more realistic and detailed, but I feel that would have alienated more players than otherwise. Game Freak did a good job of going back to the slightly more chibi anime style of classic games, as it fits better with the originals. It doesn't feel as anime as Sun and Moon, and instead feels more like a cartoon, which gives it a wider appeal across the globe. Having a more cartoony style also allows for greater customization. One downside in this game are the new designs for the player and rival are pretty bland. While the rival's design can't be changed, the player can alter theirs along with their partner Pokémon, and this really increases the customization options available. Having the cartoony style also helps with some silly or out of place moments to feel more natural. Pokémon now follow you and players can even ride some. You simply wouldn't get the same glee from watching more realistic people holding onto the stomach of a Snorlax as you do getting these classic Pokémon looking trainers do it. This is all to say I really like the art style of this game, and I think it captures the classic Pokémon games perfectly, sometimes even literally. The music is also amazing. I talked about the nostalgia factor earlier, and this large in part thanks to the music. When the game starts and you hear that initial startup theme, recreated with new instruments and a cleaner audio, my heart was hit with such a nostalgic overload that I had to simply wait and stare Oak until I was ready to move on from the music. It was that good, and while the amount of new tracks are minor, the recreated old ones are all fantastic. While visually and audibly the game is outstanding, the UI and sound effects are pretty standard Pokémon fare. Each Pokémon's cry still sticks to the more digital style from older games, with the exception of your partner who borrows from the anime, and the UI is familiar to anyone who has played the 3DS games. It is practically identical, although less instantaneous due to being pushed down onto one screen for the first time in over a decade. Still, the same UI and sound effects all go towards this feeling of the same for the presentation, but in a good way. Nostalgia is the aim of the game, and if you never grew up with the originals, there is certainly some charm lost in this department. But for those who remember choosing between Bulbasaur, Charmander and Squirtle, the presentation can't help but place a stupid smile across the player's face. The gameplay is the biggest change to this game, and that has also made it the most decisive part of Pokémon Let's Go. Many of the basic elements of Pokémon are still here. Fighting trainers and gym leaders are back to the basics of pre-Sun and Moon, lacking Z-moves but having the option to Mega Evolve with the right item. Using items to heal Pokémon, teach them moves and catch Pokémon are also all here, and the general overworld mobility is identical to X and Y. All the basics are here, and they don't feel much different from before. What has changed significantly is the way wild Pokémon battles have been altered, and this has been one of the most controversial features of this game. It is also where most of Pokémon Go's influence has been seen. Now, there is no fighting involved in capturing a Pokémon, excluding legendaries, and instead players have to rely on their own skills to throw the Pokéball accurately. You can also use stronger Pokéballs and berries to increase your chances of a successful catch. This greatly streamlines the capturing process and encourages players to capture as many Pokémon as possible, which seems to be the big focus of this title. Many of the new gameplay additions are around catching Pokémon, which really puts the focus on the slogan, "Gotta catch 'em all." Pokémon now walk around in the overworld, which means players can focus on specific Pokémon they want to catch, instead of wasting time battling or running from unwanted Zubats in caves, just as an example. This new feature also encourages chaining. Catching the same Pokémon in a row can offer benefits and increase the chances of shinies, which makes it now easier than ever for shiny hunters. And all of the hordes of Caterpie and Pidgeys that players have caught can be transferred into Pokémon Candy like in Go, which can then be used to upgrade your Pokémon's base stats. This causes one of the biggest issues in balance, as you can use candies to completely max out a Pokémon's stats, even if they are only at level 1, and use this to completely trash other Pokémon. It works towards making any Pokémon overpowered, and while this does remove a lot of the grind of IV trading, it results in making the game easy to completely unbalance, and make the overall difficulty even easier than it already is. And this easiness is another big factor. It's clear that the target audience for this game are people who have never played a Pokémon game before, as there is very little challenge. A lot of early trainers simply have one Pokémon each, and they are always underleveled. Gym leaders are an exception to this, but now the game enforces specific requirements to fight them. For Brock, you must have a Pokémon that he is weak to, and for Sabrina, you need to have caught at least 50 different types of Pokémon. These requirements are designed to ensure that players always have the advantage, and it just removes some of the challenge. It also creates the issue that customized playstyles, like Nuzlocke runs, are simply not doable in this game, as certain Pokémon are required to advance. Other factors that make this game too easy are the ways Pokémon are trained and held. An overpowered EXP share has been an issue for a lot of current Pokémon games, but Go takes this to a next level. Everyone in your party gets experience, and because you are not battling wild Pokémon anymore, there is very little risk involved. Even if your Pokémon did faint in battle though, once you are back on the overworld you can easily swap it out. There are no PCs in this game, instead you carry all your Pokémon with you, and you simply need to swap out your main 6. This trivialises some sections of the game that before would require careful use of your Pokémon to make sure they don't all faint. One thing I wanted to talk about quickly at the end here is the Poké Ball Plus accessory. Nintendo were kind enough to give me one, and it works as a unique Joy-Con. Honestly, this has by far been the most comfortable way to play the game, and despite the lack of buttons, I have never had any major issues. Some aspects in menus can't be accessed due to this lack of buttons, but it's all minor stuff. It is a great way to play this game, however it's not perfect. Having the joystick also be the main button to select can often lead to times where I want to select a menu item and it overshoots it. In addition, the Pokéball seems very fragile. The game encourages players to place a Pokemon inside or walk around with it outside, which I did, and although I was being as careful as possible, the Pokemon seems to have stopped making any noise when it's not connected to Pokemon Let's Go. I can no longer hear the cries of my Pokemon, which kind of sucks. I also had significant problems with the device and Pokemon Go itself, the problem being that it just simply won't connect. Try as I might, I can't get this Poké Ball accessory to connect to Pokemon Go, and so I can't use it. This is apparently a problem Niantic is aware of, but has no current fix for, so I can't review that part. Thankfully, Push Dustin did manage to get his working, and will be providing his thoughts in another video. Overall, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee is Let's Go easy, and for those into competitive play or those hoping for a more challenging experience than the last mainline game, are going to be disappointed. For me, the game's easiness made it a relaxing experience where I could bask in the nostalgia of it all. However, at the same time, it never motivated me to progress. I never felt like I had to see what was coming next, which is unusual for me in a Pokemon game. Pokemon Let's Go Eevee feels like an anniversary game. The throwback to the original titles, now in HD for the first time, and the reliance on only the original 151, is all designed to make players feel nostalgic, and for me this worked. I really enjoyed travelling Kanto once more and really trying to catch them all. However, for those who never grew up with the originals and are looking for the next mainline Pokemon RPG, they're going to be disappointed. It isn't even the changes to the catching system that causes this, it is the constant hand-holding and overall easiness of the game that makes the players feel like they're going through the motions. There is no challenge here, and that can be demotivating for those looking for a proper Pokemon experience. Before I go, I want to thank Nintendo UK once again for sending me a copy of this game to review. I hope it's done them well. As for everyone else, let me know if you liked this review, let me know if you picked up Pokemon or if my review has influenced your opinion in any sort of way. I want to give a special shout out to all of our patrons, in particular the super patron, the Duke of Dorks. Link to his channel is below. Do all of that usual YouTube jazz with the like and subscribe and alerts, and always remember to return to the source.